Hi everyone, and welcome to the gallery. I know a lot of you are people that I've never met before, and I know you're all fans of Michael Massie, as you should be. And so I particularly want to welcome you and thank you for coming out for this incredibly special opening. This is my very first show with Michael, and we've been together for 4 years, as it were. But there's been no ability for us to have shows until now. We have, I can't tell you, not only is Michael a brilliant artist, but he is the best guy in the world. And so I'm delighted to, I'm gonna just be very quiet now because it's all about Michael and all about what Michael can say, but here he is, and just welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You're on your own now.
Okay. It's funny, she doesn't know what she's going to say about me, but I don't even know what I'm going to say either. Just kidding. No, well, thank you for coming, everyone. I really appreciate you showing up and taking your time on a Thursday evening to look at something I do as a pastime. Anyway, these are works that were done within the last 4 years. You might get a little bit of humor from them, some of them. Most of my work is I try to keep it humorous. Life has enough stress in it as it is, so my work is about forgetting all the stress and just looking at something that's a bit of fun. So, like a lot of my stories in the stone relate with Inuit culture or with something that I grew up with. So you're taking in a lot of what I've either seen, been around, or done, or thought, and then you'll get some stuff that I picked up over the years about the culture of Inuit, how they think, their stories, their legends. And for me, transformation is my favorite. I taught in Joe Haven back in the early 90s, and the artists that lived there, Judas Ulloa, Nelson, and I can't remember the other brother's name, Charlie Ugyuk, they were my idols. Their work was just so spiritual. You could tell it came from them. And the stories they knew, and they put that in their work. And when you see artists that are doing that and you have the same mindset, I try to do the same thing with my work, is I try and put what I can, as much as I can, into it. Some of them turn out better than others, and you'll never know which ones they are from me. I don't do that, but I do my works. I like all my works because each one helps me understand something else for the next one, or the next one, or 20 after down the road. But they're all like a learning experience for me as well. But again, I do like to keep humor in my work. And this one here, just for an example, it's called Oddity. And it's like how a lot of people, or some people, can look at artists, is we're an odd group of people. We dress differently than most people. We certainly think differently than most people. But we spend our life trying to get out what we love to do and expressing it through our works. And so this one was just basically Oddity. So I took images from, or parts from, other pieces I've worked on, like the owl's leg. I've done numerous owls. The human leg, I've done that in a piece or two before. Now they're not the same as other pieces, but I use that as a starter point. And the same thing with the walrus flipper. The hand and the arm, and that was a tea-set design I did, and a teapot design I did. But I wanted the arm there to get that human factor, and also the leg goes over on this side. So I was trying to get that movement as well through the way it went. But it's not a T, and I play on the word T. I like anything that ends with T, so I can play with it, like there's personality. One I did years ago was, one of my favorite titles is Puberty. And that helped. Like, the idea is, just to get back into that one just very quickly, the puberty one came about from my daughter going to school, and she was doing sex education. And this is my oldest daughter, so this was quite a few years ago. And at the time I was working on 5 teapots, but there was this one teapot body that I had that looked more like a pumpkin than anything else, and I couldn't get that pumpkin out of my head. And I hated the body. I really thought about scrapping it. But then one day my daughter came home from school. So this is kind of how I get ideas for titles. So my daughter came home from school, and my wife Joanne was, knowing she was doing sex education, was really curious what's she going to come home and say today. So Joanne meets her at the door of the house. Keisha's standing there with a little book bag. She's like this tall. And Joanne opens the door and, hi, sweetie. And she goes, hi, mommy. And Joanne says, well, come in. And she goes, do you know what we learned in school today? And Joanne said, no. And she's like really curious of what the answer is going to be because she was dying to know what her day was going to be like. So anyway, she said, no, I'm going to tell you this as she told it. So anyway, she said, they told us how babies are made. Did Daddy have to stick his penis in your vagina to make me? And so because she said that, I started thinking of puberty because it's just, you know, just something that switched in my... So then I turned that teapot into look like a sperm. And I gave, the spout was from a Japanese male genitalia because they do that a lot with their work. And then the spout or the teapot handle was the tail of the sperm. And the little legs and stuff were like sperm and stuff like this. And I had sperm all over the teapot, so that's weird. So I try and take something that I don't like if I've made it, and I turn it into something a little bit of fun. So it's just a matter for me, it's like, you know, sometimes I'll have an idea, it might go right away, but sometimes I have to think about an idea and I work it around and I do sketches and things like this. So it ends up sometimes the way I've sketched it, and other times it ends up, who knows, it could be completely different. But the idea for me is about fun, looseness. There's stories in the catalog. The stories are with all the pieces that are here. Actually, it's funny because when I was doing the video earlier today, I had to pick up the catalog and read the stories over because I couldn't remember them. There's just too many stories I've written over the years and I can't remember them all. But they all have their own stories, and I try and base that. But like, again, with the stonework, because it's already a three-dimensional object in its own sense, I try to include both sides, if not 3 or 4 sides in a carving, because you can walk around it, and it's where it's automatically a three-dimensional object. Whereas teapots come flat silver. So you're working with a 2-dimensional piece into a 3-dimensional piece. So you have to think totally different with them. But I love working in silver, and I have to say thank you to Pat because she's allowed me to work in silver again for the last 4 years. I haven't before that because of the expense of it, but now it's starting to trickle down, so I don't mind. But yeah, and then like the dragonflies, I've done those numerous times. Well, not numerous, sorry, 4 or 5 times, but they're always different. You'll never get the same thing twice from me, never, ever. I've had people ask me that. I have a lady right now who's bugging me to make me a teapot that's exactly like one I've made before. Sorry, I don't do that. You'll never get one remade twice. And the big reason why I do that is not because it becomes kind of production work when you're doing repeating, and I'm not into production. I'm always trying to make each one better. The idea is try and, you know, push yourself a little harder to try and think of how things can be fixed. So for this one here, it was the body, the 2 bodies joined together. That was a little bit of a challenge in itself. The wings are a challenge just because of all the little holes that you have to cut out. But the way I've attached the wings this time is much better than the previous times I've done it. It's just working ideas out and techniques out to try and make things look cleaner. And I strive for cleanliness, like clean lines. Like when you look at my work around the spouts and around all the bezels, I try and, like, they're soldered on, so you have clumps of solder sometimes that stick off. So I clean all that stuff up. I try and have a pristine kind of thing. Like, I don't want you to see my mistakes. Like, you guys will never know my mistakes, but I do. But other than that, you know, they all, like I say, they all have stories. I still like working in stone, but I'm having a great time taking a break from stone. The silver is just, like, I mean, that's how I really became known in the art world, was through my teapots. And right now I think personality might be the 105th. I'm not quite sure. And there's more to come, because that's something I'll never veer off of our teapots. Ulu bowls I do once in a while. And again, like, they're based on family. The 3 Ulus represent husband, wife, or mother, father, child. It doesn't become a family until the child is introduced. And then the bowl on top is a representation of the hudulik, which is a stone lamp. And so here, the idea was where the family's holding their hands together to keep warm in the light or the heat from the hudulik. So that's what they're basically about. Like the intensity comes from because it was a very intense teapot to work on. I had a lot of troubles trying to figure out how I was going to solder the posts. That took longer than I expected. So I think about titles and I try and keep them within the realm of where the teapot is or where it's going. Two people, Pat included, and a friend of mine, Kenny Mead, saw personality, the one on the left, and when he walked into the studio when I'd had it partly done, he said, "Hey, that looks like a purse." And when I showed Pat, she said the same thing, "Oh, that's a purse." So then as soon as that was said, I started thinking about personality. So then that's how the title comes about. The one on the right is called non-functionality, and it's not a functional teapot in a sense, because when you look at a teapot, there's a way of looking at a teapot, like if you're going to buy one, to know if it's a functional teapot. It's by the spout height compared to the lid opening. The spout height at the very bottom of the spout has to be just slightly over the opening of the lid. If it's below or if it's above, then it's not going to pour properly. You'll get drips or you'll get splatters. So I try and make things that are functional sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't happen. And I knew that one wasn't, so I just decided to keep clean lines, a nice gestural movement into it, and have it non-functional. And then, of course, the title just kind of falls in place all on its own. And then you get into weird little creatures, which I love because the transformation goes back to my days when I was a kid. I always used to drift off when I was young, wishing I could, transform into a bird so I can fly over everything. Or, a bug walking along the ground to see how big everybody looks. That kind of weird thinking when you're a kid. And that still sticks with me today when I'm working. And so, this comes from stories, and sometimes they're stories I've made up. But like this one's about a little man who was too lazy to do anything, and the shaman turned him into a larvae in hopes that he'll regrow into something better. Because he never used to help the family, never used to help the hunters. He was just one of those guys who, just clung off everybody else and didn't do a thing in life. So he was turned into a larvae to reborn into something probably better. But and like here, this is a guy, he's fishing. This is about a story of a young man fishing with his father. I did it so that his parka has fish scales on it. I gave it one human hand just because it's about a story of life, in life. And then I gave it the fish fin to give it the idea of what the man is hunting. And then you have another story here about, brings me back to drama in high school. Grade 3, I believe it was the last time in school for me that I actually physically did any kind of painting or anything. And that hurt after that because then I was stuck with academics, and I hate academics. And most artists do. And so anyway, in high school, I was able to take drama, and it became the closest thing for art, and it was a lot of fun. We did well. We won provincial drama festival at the time, and we had a great time. We had a great instructor or coach. But this is about when used to be at the drama practices, and it's supposed to be he's dressed up in garb for the play. And then we're doing the practice, and then all of a sudden our director says, cut, it wasn't said right, or blah, 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 the stage isn't set up properly, or something like this, and we got to do another take. And so I end up calling that one take 37, which is like, okay, you're getting really tired of this now. So that's why you have the tongue hanging out, and everything is kind of drooped. And the same with the other side. You'll see a man that's dressed up like an owl and his tongue is hanging. It's like, oh, come on. So it's like those kind of things I'm trying to express, is just trying to get an idea out of things I've either experienced or things like oddity. I've experienced lots of times people thought we were odd and told me that. And that's okay, I'm cool. But it's all like, because it's the 3-dimension, like I say, it's like I like to get the whole rock most of the time. I don't like just one side of a rock. Because then it doesn't become 3-dimensional in my mind. It's 3-dimensional when you can walk around the whole thing and you see something on both sides or 3 sides or whatever. But I'm going to stop there and let you enjoy the show. I'm here for the evening, and we'll just chat when we have time. And
Absolutely.
Thank you, Pat, once again. It's been a pleasure.
In this space, I have welcomed so many artists, and I have to tell you that this guy's just like my favorite. I have a couple of things to say. One is I just wanted to mention that we have with us Brian Rice, who is an extraordinary artist curator and a member of the Inuit Art Foundation, and Alyssa Brosida, also a member of the Inuit Art Foundation, and Michael is a member, in addition to having the Order of Canada, is a member of the Inuit Art Foundation as well. And, you know, it has been very supportive, as has Adventure Canada, of artists. And so I just wanted to give credit where credit is due.
Yes.
And beyond that, you know, there's wine, there's all sorts of wonderful things to eat. So enjoy, and I'm sure Michael will be delighted to
available.
chat. Yeah.
Want to have a chat on here?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So go and have some wine, and again, thanks for coming.
Yes, thank you.